never meant to end up on that road. I'd been driving since early afternoon, trying to make it across the state in one go. The route on my phone looked simple enough. 2 highways, then a smaller road that cut through farmland and would spit me out near the interstate again. It was the kind of shortcut you take when you're tired of traffic and convinced the map knows better than you do. By the time the sun started to go down, the road had narrowed into a single lane each way. No shoulder, trees pressing close on both sides like they were trying to reclaim the asphalt. The signal bars on my phone dropped to 1, then none. The air outside had that sharp, damp smell you get near fields after a rain. I remember thinking I should turn around, not for any spooky reason, just practical. I didn't like being without service. I didn't like how far I felt from anything. I didn't turn around. My car started to sound wrong about 10 minutes later. The engine didn't sputter. It didn't give me dramatic warning. It just lost power, like I'd suddenly been towing a trailer. I eased my foot down and it didn't respond the way it should. Then the dashboard lit up. I pulled over as far as I could, gravel grinding under my tires. When I turned the key off and then back on, the engine wouldn't catch. It cranked and cranked until the sound made my stomach tighten. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, trying not to panic, listening to the quiet outside. No cars passed, no headlights in either direction, just the wind moving through branches. I got out and popped the hood, more out of habit than hope. I'm not a mechanic. I know how to check the oil. I know what a battery looks like. Everything under the hood might as well have been a puzzle. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not gasoline, not oil. Something sour. I leaned in with my phone flashlight on, scanned around like that would magically show me what was wrong. I didn't see a loose belt. The battery terminals looked fine. Nothing was obviously broken. I closed the hood and stood beside the car, staring down the road. I tried my phone again. Nothing. No signal. No way to call a tow. No way to tell anyone where I was. The smart thing would have been to stay with the car. That's what people always say. Don't wander off. Someone will come by. But standing there in that fading light, with the trees closing in and the silence too big, staying didn't feel smart. It felt like waiting. I started walking. The air got colder as I moved. The road curved and dipped. The trees thinned and I reached a stretch where fields opened on the right, tall grass moving like water. A few minutes later, I saw a light ahead. It wasn't a street light. It was a porch light. A house sat back from the road, half hidden by a line of old oaks. White paint, peeling. A porch that sagged a little in the middle. An outbuilding off to the side. There were no other houses in sight. I hesitated at the end of the driveway. I told myself I'd knock, ask to use a phone, maybe get directions. If it felt wrong, I'd leave. I walked up. The porch boards creaked under my weight. A wind chime made from bent spoons clinked softly in the breeze. Before I could knock, the door opened. A woman stood there like she'd been waiting. She was in her late 50s, maybe older. Her hair was pulled back tight and streaked with gray. She wore an apron over a sweater and jeans, like she'd been cooking. Her eyes moved over me in a quick sweep. Not scared, not surprised. "You lost?" she asked. "My car broke down," I said. "I'm sorry to bother you." I just need to call someone. I don't have service." She looked past me at the road, then back at me. "No service out here," she said. "You can come in a minute. It's getting dark." I should have felt relief. Instead, something about how she said it made me feel like I'd been weighed and measured. Still, the cold was creeping through my jacket, and the thought of walking back to my car and standing in the dark wasn't appealing. "Thanks," I said. She stepped aside. "Come on." The house smelled like food and something else underneath. The food smell was strong, meat and onions maybe. The other smell was faint, like damp clothes that never fully dry. The entryway was cluttered with shoes and coats. A hunting rifle leaned against the wall, not hidden, just there like a broom. A man sat in a recliner in the living room, turned halfway toward the doorway. He was big, heavy in the shoulders and chest. His hair was thinning, his beard untrimmed. He held a beer in one hand and a TV remote in the other, though the TV was off. His eyes fixed on me. "Who's that?" he asked. "Car trouble," the woman said. "Needs the phone." He grunted and didn't move. A boy, maybe 13 or 14, appeared in the hallway and stopped when he saw me. He had the same hard stare as the man. His hands were stained dark, like he'd been working in dirt or something thicker. "Go wash up," the woman told him without looking. He didn't move at first. Then he turned and disappeared down the hall. The woman led me into the kitchen. It was clean, too clean compared to the rest of the house. The counters were wiped down, the floor swept. A big pot sat on the stove, simmering. A cordless phone sat on the wall. "There," she said. "Try it." I picked it up, dialed my roadside assistance number from memory. It rang and rang. No answer. "Maybe the line's out," I said. "No," she said, and her voice was flat. "Try again." I did. Same thing. The man's voice drifted from the living room. "Ain't gonna get nobody out here tonight." I looked toward the doorway. The woman watched me closely. "You can sit. Warm up. We'll figure it out." "I shouldn't impose," I said. "If I can't get through, I can walk back and—" "Walk back in the dark?" she said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "No, stay a bit. We're having supper." I started to say no. Then my stomach betrayed me with a loud, embarrassing rumble. The woman's smile widened slightly. "See? Sit." I sat at the small kitchen table. The chair legs scraped on the floor, too loud in the quiet. The woman poured me a glass of water. Her hands were steady. "What's your name?" she asked. "Evan," I said. "I'm Linda," she said. "That's my husband, Roy. Our boy's Travis." She went back to the stove and stirred the pot. The smell made my mouth water, and that annoyed me. I didn't like being hungry in a stranger's house. I didn't like needing anything. Roy came into the kitchen, beer still in hand. He stood in the doorway for a second, looking at me like he was trying to decide if I was worth the trouble. "Where you headed?" he asked. "West," I said. "Trying to get back to my sister's. My car." "Yeah," he said, cutting me off. He took a drink. "These roads'll chew a car up. People don't listen." I didn't know what to say to that. Travis came back in, hands clean now, but his nails were still dark. He sat across from me at the table without being invited. He stared. "Don't stare," Linda said. He looked away, but only barely. Linda put a bowl in front of me and ladled out stew. Thick, rich, with chunks of meat and potatoes. She set down a piece of bread, still warm. I hesitated. "You don't have to," I said. "You will," Roy said. Linda shot him a look. "Roy." He shrugged like he'd done nothing. I took a bite. It was good. Too good. The meat was tender, almost buttery, like it had been slow cooked all day. I ate faster than I meant to. Roy watched me the whole time. Travis watched too, quieter, like a dog waiting for scraps. Linda ate less than anyone. She picked at her bowl, eyes drifting to the window every so often like she was listening for something. I tried the phone again after eating. Still nothing. Roy leaned on the counter. "Told you. Line's fine. Nobody's picking up. It's too far out. Tow trucks don't like coming out here." "What do you suggest?" I asked. He scratched his beard. "You can stay the night. We got a spare room. In the morning I'll take you to the station. Or I can go look at your car. Might be something simple." I felt tension in my shoulders ease a little. A night here wasn't ideal, but it beat freezing by the roadside. "Thanks," I said. "I appreciate it." Linda's eyes met mine. "Don't be shy. We don't get visitors much." There was something in the way she said visitors. After supper, Linda cleared the table. Travis carried bowls to the sink without being asked. Roy went back to the living room. Linda told me the spare room was upstairs. "The bathroom's down the hall," she said. "Towels are in the closet. You need anything, you holler." I climbed the stairs. They groaned under my feet. The hallway upstairs was narrow, with pictures on the walls. Family photos mostly. Linda and Roy younger. Travis as a little kid. And other people. That was the first thing that hit me. There were pictures with faces I didn't recognize. Men and women standing with Roy and Linda. Arms around shoulders. Smiles too wide. I stopped and looked closer. Some of the pictures had been taken in the same kitchen. Same table. Same curtain in the window. Visitors. I felt my throat tighten. Maybe they were relatives. Friends from long ago. I forced myself to keep walking. The spare room was at the end of the hall. Linda opened the door and flicked on the light. It was small. A twin bed with a quilt. A dresser. A chair. A window that looked out over the backyard. "Make yourself comfortable," she said. "We lock up at night. Not much trouble out here, but you know." "Sure," I said. She lingered in the doorway. "You sleep light?" "What?" "Some people, they hear every creak," she said. "House makes noise." "I'm fine," I said. She nodded, then shut the door. I sat on the bed, listening. The house was quiet, but not empty. I could hear movement downstairs. A muffled voice. Roy, maybe. Travis laughing at something. A chair scraping. I pulled out my phone and tried for service again. Nothing. I tried texting my sister anyway, even though it wouldn't go through. Car broke down. Staying with a family nearby. No service. I'll call when I can. I hit send and watched it sit there, undelivered. I went to the bathroom, brushed my teeth, washed my face. The bathroom was clean like the kitchen, almost obsessive. The mirror had been wiped free of spots. The towel smelled of bleach. When I turned to leave, I noticed a lock on the outside of the bathroom door. Not a normal bathroom lock. A sliding bolt mounted on the hallway side. I stared at it longer than I should have. Back in the spare room, I sat on the bed again. I told myself I was being paranoid. These people were odd, sure, but lots of rural folks are cautious with strangers. Still. The pictures, the lock, the way Roy had said you will. I lay down fully clothed. I didn't sleep right away. I listened. I tried to identify the sounds. At some point, the noises downstairs stopped. The house went quiet. Then, later, I heard something else. A thud, faint from outside. I sat up. Another thud. It sounded like something heavy being dragged. I got off the bed and went to the window. The yard was dark, lit only by the porch light and a weak glow from a barn light by the outbuilding. At first, I didn't see anything. Then I saw Roy and Travis. They were in the yard near the outbuilding, hunched over something on the ground. Roy lifted one end, Travis grabbed the other, and they dragged it toward the outbuilding. It was long. For a second, my brain tried to make it something harmless. A deer. A hog. Then the porch light caught the pale shape of an arm. I couldn't breathe. Roy and Travis pulled the thing, whatever it was, into the outbuilding. The door shut. I backed away from the window and pressed my hand over my mouth. My heart hammered so hard it felt like it was going to burst. I stood there, frozen, trying to make my brain work. Maybe it wasn't what I thought. Maybe it was a mannequin. A large animal with a leg that looked like an arm. But I'd seen fingers. I'd seen a hand. I went back to the window and looked again. The yard was empty. The outbuilding door stayed closed. I forced myself to sit on the bed. My legs were shaking. What do you do when you think you just saw something like that? Call the police. Run. Except I had no signal. And running meant going down those stairs, past Roy, past Travis, past Linda, and out into the dark with no car, no lights, no idea how far the nearest house was. I stared at the bedroom door. I got up and tried the knob slowly. It turned. No lock on my side. I opened it a crack and looked into the hallway. Dark. No sounds. I stepped out and moved quietly to the top of the stairs. I looked down. The living room was dark. The kitchen light was off. I listened for breathing, for footsteps. Nothing. I went back to the bathroom door and checked the bolt again. It was still open. That didn't help. The bolt could be for keeping kids out. I crept back to the hall and looked at the pictures again. In the dim light from the window, the faces in the photos looked wrong. Too many people. Some of them were young, like my age. Some looked like they'd been traveling, backpacks slung over shoulders, all smiling, all standing in that kitchen. I went back to my room and shut the door quietly. My hands were sweating. My mouth was dry. I sat on the bed and tried to think through options. I could wait until morning, act normal, let Roy take me to the station. But if what I saw was real, there might not be a morning for me. I could try to sneak out now, or I could try to find a weapon. The room had nothing but furniture. I moved to the dresser and opened the drawers. Clothes, blankets. I checked under the bed. Nothing. I went to the window again. The outbuilding light was still on. There was no movement. I noticed something else then. The yard had a low fence near the back, but beyond it the grass looked trampled, like a path had been worn through it, leading into the tree line. A path, maybe a way out. I put my hand on the window latch. It was painted shut. I tried harder. It didn't budge. Panic rose in my chest. I looked around for something to pry it open. The chair. I picked up the chair and used the edge to jab at the latch, careful not to make too much noise. The paint cracked. The window shifted a little. I froze, listening. No sound. I tried again. The latch gave. The window slid up with a soft scrape. Cold air rushed in. I pushed it open just enough to climb out. The drop to the ground wasn't far, but it was enough to make me hesitate. My foot found the edge of the windowsill. I lowered myself. The porch light didn't reach the back of the house. It was darker here. I dropped. My feet hit the ground hard. My ankles jolted. I stood still, listening. Nothing. I moved along the side of the house, keeping close to the wall. I could see the faint outline of the fence and the trampled path beyond. I reached the corner of the house and glanced toward the front. The porch light glowed. The driveway was empty. My car was down the road. I thought about it. If I could get back to my car, I could lock myself in and wait for daylight. But it wouldn't start. It would be a box on the side of the road. I turned toward the back fence. As I moved, I heard a door open, a creak, then the soft thump of a footstep on the porch. I stopped. Roy's voice carried into the night, low and rough. "Linda?" No answer. He stepped down the porch stairs. His boots hit the ground with a heavy sound. I ducked behind a bush and held my breath. The bush was thin, offering almost no cover. I could see through branches. Roy walked around the side of the house toward the backyard. My heart slammed. He stopped near the corner, the same corner I'd just passed. He sniffed the air like an animal. For a second I thought I might faint. Then he turned his head toward the outbuilding. A faint metallic clang came from inside it. Roy muttered something I couldn't hear and started toward the outbuilding. I stayed frozen until he was almost there. Then I ran. I didn't sprint like in movies. I moved fast but careful, feet trying not to slip in the wet grass. I reached the fence, grabbed the top, and pulled myself over. The wood dug into my palms. I dropped on the other side into the tall grass. The trampled path was clear here, leading into the trees. I followed it. Branches grabbed at my jacket. The ground was uneven. I kept stumbling on roots. Behind me, I heard Roy shout, "Hey!" The sound was sharp enough to make me flinch. I ran harder. Then another voice joined it. Linda's. "Roy, leave it. Leave it." Like I was an animal. I pushed through the trees until the path narrowed and the branches closed in. It was darker under the canopy, and I had to slow down to avoid smashing into trunks. I could hear them behind me. Roy crashing through brush. Travis's lighter footsteps. I turned my head and saw a beam of light swing between trees. A flashlight. They were hunting me. My throat burned as I breathed. Cold air cut into my lungs. I tripped and went down hard. My hands hit wet leaves. Pain shot through my wrist. I scrambled up, not letting myself look at my hand. The flashlight beam got closer. Roy's voice was loud now. "Don't make it worse. Come back. Come back." I ran and ran until the path broke into a clearing. There was a creek, narrow but moving fast over rocks. The sound of water was a relief and a problem. It covered my noise, but it also meant there might be a drop or a deep spot. On the other side, the trees looked thinner. I didn't think. I stepped into the creek. The water was freezing. It soaked my shoes instantly. The current pushed at my ankles. I waded across, slipping on rocks. When I reached the other side, I grabbed a tree trunk and hauled myself up the bank. I crouched behind a fallen log and listened. The creek water roared. Then I heard splashing. Roy stepping into it, cursing. The flashlight beam danced across the water. I pressed my face against the wet log and tried to make myself smaller. Roy's boots clomped on the rocks. The beam swept across the bank. It passed over me. For a second I thought it lingered and I could feel my skin go cold. Then it moved on. Where'd he go? Travis's voice was closer than I expected. Not scared, curious. "Quiet," Roy said. The beam moved again. I kept still so long my muscles started to cramp. The beam moved away. The splashing stopped. I waited. I told myself to wait longer. Then I crawled backward, keeping low, moving away from the creek. The woods on this side were dense but not as tangled. I found a place where bushes were thick and pushed into them. I stayed there, curled up in the wet leaves, for what felt like forever. I didn't hear them for a while. Then I heard something else. A distant engine. A car. The sound was faint but real. I lifted my head and listened. It was on the road. I didn't know where the road was, but sound carries in the woods. I crawled out of the bushes and started moving toward the sound. Careful, but desperate. The trees thinned again, and I saw a strip of pale gravel ahead. The road. I stepped out of the tree line and looked both ways. Headlights approached from the left. I ran into the road and waved my arms like a maniac. The car slowed, brakes squealing, and stopped a few yards from me. The driver's window rolled down. A man leaned out, his face tense. "What the hell are you doing?" "Please," I said, my voice breaking. "I need help. Those people." The words jammed in my throat. The driver's eyes flicked past me to the trees. He hesitated. I saw it in his face. The calculation, the fear. He could drive away. I stepped closer. Please. I think they're going to kill me. The man stared at me a second longer, then reached over and unlocked the passenger door. Get in, he said. I yanked it open and fell into the seat. The man hit the gas. The tires sprayed gravel. The car lurched forward. I turned and looked out the back window. For a second, the road was empty. Then Roy stepped out of the tree line. Even in the headlights' fading glow, I could see the shape of something in his hand. A long blade, catching light. He raised it like he was making a point, then lowered it slowly. Next to him, Travis appeared, smaller, but with the same calm stare. Linda was behind them, half in shadow. She didn't wave. She just watched. The driver didn't ask questions for a while. He drove fast, knuckles white on the steering wheel. I sat there shaking so hard my teeth clicked. You okay? He finally asked. No, I said. No, I'm not. He glanced at me again. You hurt? My wrist, I said. I fell. I'm wet. You're lucky I came by, he said. Nobody drives this road at night unless they have to. I swallowed. They dragged something, a body, into an outbuilding. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, You sure? I saw an arm, I said. A hand. He exhaled through his nose. Jesus. He drove another mile in silence. Then he said, There's a diner off the next town. We'll stop. Call the cops. I nodded, but my mind was still stuck back at that house. The stew, the pictures, visitors. The driver's car smelled like stale coffee and cigarette smoke. It was a normal smell. It made me feel more human again. We reached a small town not long after. A handful of buildings, a gas station, a diner with a neon sign that buzzed. The driver pulled into the diner parking lot. The lot was almost empty. I got out and my legs almost gave out under me. The driver steadied me. Easy? Inside, the diner was warm and too bright. Two older women sat in a booth. A waitress behind the counter looked up, startled by the sight of us. The driver spoke first. Need to use your phone? Emergency. The waitress nodded, wide-eyed, and pointed to the counter. I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. When the dispatcher answered, my mouth went dry. I forced myself to talk. I told her my name. I told her I'd been stranded, taken in by a family, and I'd escaped because I believed they'd killed someone. The dispatcher asked where. I couldn't give an address. I didn't know it. I described the road, the curve, the field, the oak trees, the White House. She asked if I could go back. No, I said too fast. No, I can't. She said officers would meet us at the diner. I hung up and realized I was sweating despite the cold. The driver bought me coffee. I couldn't drink it. We waited. 2 sheriff's deputies arrived first, then a third. They asked questions, took my statement, asked the driver what he'd seen. I told them everything. One of them, A tall deputy with tired eyes asked me about the stew. "What about it?" I said. "You said it was meat," he said. "Yeah." "Did it taste odd?" I stared at him. He held my gaze and didn't blink. My stomach twisted. "I don't know," I said. "It tasted like stew." He nodded like he'd expected that. They told me to stay in town. They'd take me to a clinic to get my wrist checked. They'd bring me back to the diner after. I asked if they'd go to the house. The tired-eyed deputy said, "We will." His tone wasn't reassuring. It was resigned, like he'd heard this kind of thing before. At the clinic, my wrist was sprained. They wrapped it, gave me painkillers I didn't take. Back at the diner, the deputies took my clothes for evidence. Someone found me a sweatshirt and sweatpants from a donation box. I sat in a booth staring at my hands. My phone buzzed finally. 1 bar of service. A flood of messages came in at once. My sister asking where I was. A friend sending a meme. The normal world pushing back in. I texted my sister. "I'm okay. Car broke down. Bad situation. I'll call soon." Then I waited. The deputies left town in 2 cars. Hours passed. The diner closed. The waitress stayed because the deputies told her to. The 2 older women left. The driver who'd picked me up left too, after giving his name and number to the deputies. I sat there alone with the hum of the fridge behind the counter. When the deputies came back, it was almost morning. The tired-eyed deputy walked in first. His uniform was dirty at the knees. He sat in the booth across from me. His face looked older than it had a few hours before. "We went to the house," he said. "And?" My voice was thin. He didn't answer right away. He rubbed his forehead. "It was empty," he said. "No one there." I stared at him. "What do you mean empty?" "No people, no cars, no lights." "But the house," I said. "The outbuilding, We found the house," he said. "We found the outbuilding." He paused. "We found a lot," he added. My throat tightened. He leaned forward. "You were right to run." "What did you find?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. "We found signs of a struggle in the outbuilding," he said. "We found blood, not fresh, old, layers of it. We found tools, knives, hooks." My stomach rolled. He held up a hand. "I'm not going to go into it." "Did you find a body?" I asked. "No," he said. "Not whole." I swallowed hard. "We found a pit out back," he said. "It was covered with boards. It had been used more than once." I gripped the edge of the table with my good hand. "Where are they?" I whispered. He shook his head. "Gone." "Just like that?" He leaned back. "They didn't leave much. Clothes in drawers, some food in the pantry. But anything that mattered, they took." "How?" I said. "We came back here. They had to know." "They probably did," he said. "They're not stupid." I thought about Roy sniffing the air, Linda watching the window, the way she'd said we don't get visitors much. They were used to this. The deputy slid something across the table. It was a photograph, a printout, a missing person flyer, a young woman smiling, dark hair, backpack. Her name was Alyssa, he said. Went missing last year. Hiked through this area. Never came out. I stared at the face. I remembered the photos upstairs. Did you find pictures? I asked. He nodded. A wall full of them. He looked at me carefully. You recognize her? I saw her in a photo in their hallway, I said. My voice sounded far away. He exhaled. That's what I figured. He sat there for a moment, then said, We're calling in the state investigators. We're going to put out alerts, patrol the roads. He paused. But I need you to understand something, he said. What? He leaned forward again. There are places out here that don't want to be found. People build lives in pockets of the map where they can do whatever they want. Sometimes they've been doing it so long they think it's normal. I stared at him. He wasn't trying to comfort me. He was warning me. They were eating people, I said, and the words felt unreal. He didn't correct me. He just nodded once, slow. I thought about the stew. My stomach lurched and I stood too fast, pushing away from the booth. I made it to the bathroom and got sick. When I came out, the deputy was waiting. Sorry, I said. Don't be, he said. He handed me a paper cup of water. I drank and tried to steady my hands. I need my car, I said stupidly. He nodded. We'll get it towed. I waited for him to say they'd catch them. He didn't. Later that day, after more statements and paperwork and a long call with my sister that ended with her crying and yelling at me to come home, I sat in a small motel room the deputies paid for and stared at the ceiling. I kept seeing Roy's face in the headlights. Not angry, not frantic, just calm, like he'd been annoyed I'd made a mess. I slept in short bursts, waking up sweating. In the afternoon, the tired-eyed deputy called. We found your car, he said. You towed it? Not yet, he said. We went to where you said it was. The hood was open. My stomach tightened. What? The battery cable had been loosened, he said. Someone did it on purpose. I sat up. He continued. They didn't just find you. They set you up. My throat went dry. They were waiting, I whispered. Looks like it, he said. After I hung up, I sat there in the motel room and stared at the door. I thought about the pictures of smiling strangers. I thought about the pit. I thought about the stew and how hungry I'd been. I thought about how easily Linda had smiled at me. That night, I pushed the dresser in front of the motel room door. I knew it was ridiculous. A motel room door has a deadbolt. The town had streetlights. There were other people. But my body didn't care about logic. I slept with the TV on low. In the days that followed, the story hit local news. Not all of it. The official statements were vague. Investigation ongoing. Suspects at large. They asked if anyone had information about the family. No one seemed to. Neighbors were interviewed. They said the family kept to themselves. They said they didn't cause trouble. One man said he'd seen Roy at the feed store sometimes. Another woman said Linda bought flour and sugar in bulk. It sounded like normal life. That was the part that kept getting under my skin. They weren't monsters hiding in a castle. They were people who had learned how to move through the world without drawing attention. I drove home in a rental car, my sprained wrist aching, my clothes in a plastic bag. My sister hugged me so hard I thought she'd crack my ribs. I didn't tell her everything. I told her enough. Weeks passed, then months. I went back to work. I tried to act normal. I laughed at jokes. I went to the grocery store. I ate dinner. Some things didn't come back. I couldn't eat stew anymore. I couldn't look at a family photo wall without feeling sick. I couldn't hear a floorboard creak in the night without sitting up. Once, in a crowded parking lot, a man brushed past me, and the smell of damp clothes hit my nose. I spun around so fast I almost fell. It wasn't Roy. It was a stranger. But my heart didn't slow down for a long time. The deputies called once more. Late summer. They found the house burned. The tired-eyed deputy said. Burned. Someone torched it, he said. We don't know when. Could have been right after they left. Could have been later. My mouth went dry. They're covering tracks, I said. Maybe, he said. Or maybe someone else found it. Someone who knew. I thought about the way he'd talked in the diner. How he'd said there are places that don't want to be found. Did you catch them? I asked. He didn't answer right away. No, he said. And then he added something that made my blood run cold. We found more pictures, he said. Not on the wall. Hidden. People from other towns. Other states. So they traveled, I said. Or they had help, he said. Help. After that, I stopped picking up unknown numbers. I moved apartments. I changed my routine. I kept my phone charged. I told myself I was being smart, not paranoid. Every so often I would check the news, search for updates. There were none. The case faded. New stories replaced it. But I didn't forget. For a while I tried to treat it like a bad accident. Something that happened to me, not something that followed me. I told myself the fear would burn off if I kept moving. It didn't work like that. The first week after I got home, I kept replaying the same small moments, not the chase through the woods, not Roy stepping out with that blade. It was the normal parts that stuck. Linda's clean kitchen, the way Travis carried bowls like he'd done it 1,000 times. Roy leaning on the counter, talking about tow trucks like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. I started noticing little things I'd missed. Her hands had been steady, but her knuckles were rough and cracked. Roy's boots had dried mud in the grooves, thick and dark, like he'd been in wet ground for a long time. Travis's nails had been stained like he'd been digging. Those details didn't matter by themselves. They mattered because my brain was trying to make a timeline, trying to find the moment where I could have done something different. I met with a state investigator a few days after I got back. He drove in from the capital and sat with me in a small interview room at the local police department. Beige walls, a table that wobbled, coffee that tasted burnt. He didn't look like a TV cop. He looked like a guy who'd sat through too many bad stories. He asked me to tell it again from the beginning. I did. When I got to the part about the photos in the hallway, he leaned forward. "How many?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "A lot. Enough that it felt like they were proud." "Any faces you remember clearly?" I shook my head. "Not then. I was tired. I just registered that there were too many strangers." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were printed copies of missing person flyers. Different counties. Different years. "I'm not asking you to torture yourself," he said. "If you don't know, you don't know. But look anyway." I looked. Some of the faces were like Alyssa's, young, smiling, outdoorsy, the kind of people who trust a map and a good pair of shoes. Others were older. A man with a work badge clipped to his belt. A woman who looked like she'd been on her way to a job interview. I stared until my eyes watered. "I can't," I said. He took the folder back like he'd expected that. Then he asked about the stew. I told him what I'd told the deputy. It tasted like stew. It tasted good. He didn't push it further. He just wrote something down. Before he left, he told me the same thing the tired-eyed deputy had, just in different words. "They're not new to this," he said. "They've had practice. If we don't catch them fast, they'll change names, change roads, blend in. That's what people like this do. People like this, like it was a category." After he left, I sat in my car in the parking lot and tried to breathe. My chest felt tight, like a hand was squeezing it. I made an appointment with a therapist because my sister begged me to. The therapist was a quiet woman with a soft voice who didn't flinch when I talked. She asked me what I was afraid of now. It was a dumb question on the surface. I was afraid of the family. I was afraid of being hunted. But when I tried to answer, what came out was different. "I'm afraid of needing help," I said. She nodded slowly. "Because you needed help, and you ended up with them." "Yeah," I said. "And if you needed help again?" I stared at the carpet. I started carrying a battery jump pack in my trunk. I got my car checked obsessively. I bought a small flashlight and kept it in my pocket even in daylight. I told myself I was being prepared. It didn't feel like preparation. It felt like building a fence around my life. The sheriff's office called me back once to walk through my route again, to see if I could narrow down where the house had been. They put me in the passenger seat of an unmarked car and drove the rural roads with me for hours. Every curve looked the same after a while. Every stretch of trees looked like every other stretch. When we found the place, the house was already a blackened shell. The porch had collapsed inward. The outbuilding was a warped frame, roof half gone. The smell of burned wood still hung in the air, sharp and bitter. The deputies kept me by the road. They didn't want me walking the property. I stood there and watched them move around like ants, taking pictures, stepping carefully. I tried to picture the kitchen inside that burned shell, the table where I ate, the phone on the wall. It was gone. The emptiness didn't make me feel better. It made me feel like they'd wiped their hands clean. A week after that, the tired-eyed deputy called again. They loosened your battery cable, he reminded me. We're treating that as deliberate. So they were out there, I said. Either them or someone working with them, he said. I sat on my couch staring at the wall. How do you even do that? You just wait by a road and sabotage cars? He was quiet for a second. It's not hard if you know where people slow down. If you've got a spot where drivers pull over. If you've done it before. After I hung up, I went outside and opened my car hood and stared at the battery like it was a threat. I started remembering the sour smell under my hood. It hadn't been gas. It could have been something spilled. Something smeared. A small thing meant to make me think my car had a real problem. I couldn't prove it, but the thought dug into me. The idea that my whole night had been staged, like a trap baited with inconvenience. The case stayed in the news for a while, then faded the way everything fades. The story turned into rumor. People argued online about whether it was real. Some said it was exaggerated. Some said it was a cult. Some said it was a meth operation. Everyone wanted a label that made sense. I knew what I'd seen. Every now and then, I'd get a call from a number I didn't recognize, and my chest would tighten. Once, I answered by accident. There was breathing on the other end. Not heavy breathing, just someone there. I said hello twice. The line went dead. I stared at the screen until it went dark. My therapist told me not to chase meaning in every random thing. She said fear makes patterns out of noise. But some noises are real. A couple months after the burn, I stopped at a rest area on a main highway in broad daylight. It was crowded. Families with kids, truckers, a tour bus. I went into the bathroom and washed my hands. I looked up at the mirror and saw a man behind me at the sinks. Big shoulders, a beard. For a split second, my body reacted before my brain did. My heart jumped, my muscles tightened, and I almost turned around swinging. Then the man spoke to someone off to the side, laughing. It wasn't Roy. It was just another guy. I stood there gripping the paper towel dispenser until my knuckles went white. Driving home after that, I realized something I hadn't said out loud. I didn't just fear them. I feared how close they'd gotten without effort. They hadn't broken into my house. They hadn't stalked me across the city. They'd just waited for the world to hand me over. A dead phone signal. A car that wouldn't start. A road with no traffic. That's all it took. I started paying attention to the people I passed in ordinary places. At gas stations. In grocery stores. At traffic lights. Not in a dramatic way. More like I was scanning for a mistake. A sign someone didn't belong. And the truth is, most people are just people. But sometimes, you see someone look at you, and you feel that same cold measurement you felt on a porch. It doesn't happen often. It only has to happen once. One night, almost a year later, I was at a grocery store late, grabbing a few things after work. It was a normal weeknight. People were tired, pushing carts, arguing quietly about brands. I was standing near the meat section, staring at packages like they were dangerous, when I felt it. A gaze. I looked up. A teenage boy stood at the end of the aisle. He was taller now than Travis had been, but the face was similar enough that my stomach dropped. Same narrow eyes, same calm stare. He didn't smile. He didn't move. He just watched me. For a second, my brain refused to accept what I was seeing. Then the boy turned, slow, and walked away. I pushed my cart after him without thinking. I reached the end of the aisle and looked left, then right. He was gone. I stood there shaking, trying to tell myself it was nothing, just a kid, just my mind. Then I saw, in the reflection of the glass freezer door across the aisle, a woman watching me from behind. Her hair was pulled back. Her face was older than Linda's had been, or maybe it was the same and my memory was playing tricks. She held a basket with a few items inside: flour, sugar, and something wrapped in brown paper that could have been anything. Our eyes met in the reflection. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look angry. She looked like she was checking something off a list. Then she turned and walked away. I didn't follow. I left my cart and walked out of the store and sat in my car and locked the doors. I watched people come and go. I watched headlights sweep the lot. I watched for a woman with hair pulled tight, for a boy with calm eyes. I didn't see them again, but I know what I saw, and I know what it means. They don't need that house. They don't need that outbuilding. They don't need those roads. They just need a person alone, tired, and convinced a shortcut is worth the risk. I don't take shortcuts anymore. I don't drive rural roads without a full tank. I don't stop when someone waves me down. And when my car makes a sound it shouldn't, I pull over where there are lights and people and cameras. Because there are families out there that look normal from a distance. They smile. They offer food. They tell you to come in because it's getting dark. And if you step over the threshold, they don't think of you as a guest. They think of you as meat.